there's a confusion here, and in me there's a clarity, and I'm asking for a greater clarity, and I'm not asking to go back into the confusion of who's who and who's to blame. I know that I do not consider myself to be awake, but from the perspective that I see from what I can see of when I will be awake, I cannot see the things that you're saying today. I cannot see blame. I cannot see anyone. When I imagine myself awake, I see that it is impossible for me to find anything at fault with a person attacking someone on the street and knifing them and murdering them. I cannot find fault with that person. I can not only not find anything worse than the doctor, I cannot find anything at fault with what they're doing. And I heard you saying that yesterday also, that when I asked the question about what it's like where you are, I heard you say that you see everything I see except you can't see our faults. And then I'm hearing you today speak as if you can hear our faults. And so I'm just saying, basically, you can drop that for me. I don't need to hear that anymore because I don't see the faults, and I want to hear what's beyond that dialogue back and forth of, for certain people, maybe they need to have this saying no, and I want to hear something more universal about, like, when we've gotten that we can say no, then how do we proceed with what we're feeling, and how do we actually enact this seemingly in this world?
Well, of course, I said absolutely nothing about blame or fault. I said that which, I'm going to say it even more clearly, that which denies life as you are presently experiencing it must be disallowed. There aren't different kinds of life. There isn't a false life that you are living here that is different from a real life that I am living from the universalist perspective, let us say. If you are alive at this very instant, which you are, whether you are experiencing it in a highly limited fashion or not, it is the life divine. It is the only life there is. And if you cannot start where you are in respecting the life you are experiencing it as you are experiencing it, you will not be capable of having or experiencing an expansion of your experience of life with a capital L. You will not be able to experience transformation of it. You must start with respect for life, right where you are, right in your limited perception at this moment. Because it is whatever small part of the life divine that you are experiencing. It is not an illusory life. And therefore, the death of it is meaningless. You have to start where you are. I've said before that none of you are an ego, even though your ego perceptions tend to color and darken and limit your innate capacity to see everything with the mind of God. And so your mind right now is the mind of God. It is the ultimate mind, but it's with shutters that have closed down so that your perception of things is very limited. And when you think that your limited perception of things is real, you are experiencing delusion, and your perception of things can only be described as illusory. I've pointed out that with an illustration of a bubble, that that of you which is circumscribed inside the bubble is the same you that extends infinitely outside of the bubble. And that what has to be abandoned or weakened until it pops is this flimsy, nebulous, soapy bubble. The you that is experiencing yourself as tiny inside the bubble is the self-same you that extends infinitely outside of it. And so you have to start right now not saying, I'm an ego, and therefore who I think I am doesn't even exist. You have to start with a basic appreciation for yourself and acknowledgement of fundamental integrity that you cannot possibly have lost, even though you are experiencing it in a limited fashion. And the only way you can weaken the bubble is to begin to be inside the bubble with the attitude that is appropriate to and natural to you in your infiniteness. Else, the bubble will continue to be reinforced. So you have no choice, ultimately, but to begin to value not only yourself because of what you divinely are, but you have to value life as you experience it globally, let us say, to the point where you absolutely disallow for the aggressive attempts to kill, to express hate in an embodied form where there is a complete dishonoring of human life. And that's why I say love one another. Loving one another means that you must begin to acknowledge and value the integrity of life wherever you find it, and honor it enough to lift it up so that respect is given fully to every evidence of life. Whether that means honoring your planet by not mistreating it with pollutants, or your society by not filling it with pollutants, and your global brotherhood by not introducing boundaries and identifications that embody the attitude of us and them. Where nationalism means us against you. Where everyone takes the practical steps, the real, down-to-earth, in-your-face practical steps of establishing harmony by caring, by having complete respect for each other, by valuing each other, and thereby embodying everything that allows for unity to occur and the unobstructed capacity to love each other. So the taking away of life cannot be the same as the giving back of life, you might say, by a surgeon. Depriving one of fulfillment cannot be the same thing as fighting for your brother's right to have everything he or she needs, whether it's a decent education, or whether it's more care than someone else gets because the need is different and requires more attention. The two are not the same. There aren't two lives, the real and the unreal. There isn't an unreality in which good and bad is going on and they both mean the same thing. Reality is the only thing in your face at this moment. The kingdom of heaven is confronting you, and it's the only thing confronting you at every moment. And you are not a little ego, a pissant human being that is meaningless, but who can somehow remember and rediscover what he or she really is somewhere else. There is nowhere else. It's all here, it's all now, and reality is what you're experiencing clearly or unclearly. And if you want to experience it more clearly, by God, you've got to start honoring the little bit of divine life that you are experiencing, because you don't have the choice to have any other experience. And you've got to develop the willingness to yield into not only self-respect, but respect for each other. And you must begin to take steps to affirm the integrity of each other, to confirm it back to each other. And that is different from taking it away and covering up the opportunity to have the inner insight and recognition of what you truly are. You will not arrive at what you truly are until you start to acknowledge that that is all there is of you, even if you are only choosing to experience a little tiny bit of it. You have never had the opportunity and never will have the opportunity to experience something that God didn't create. Some other truly independent and totally illusory sense of or selfhood, or some truly independent, self-existent universe that God doesn't have anything to do with. If you could do that, then yes, the good and the bad that go on in it would be the same thing. You see? But you don't have the option to actually experience a real illusion. And so the only thing you have available to you is the opportunity to see the reality that is the only thing available to you to experience with greater and greater clarity as a result of becoming less and less defended against it. And you become less defended against experiencing reality by valuing whatever little bit of it you are currently experiencing and having curiosity to see the more of it that is there, that is present right here to experience. We will take a break. Okay, if we'll pass the microphone along, and I would still like to follow through so that everyone who wants to share regarding the subject can.
Thank you, Raj. I wasn't here yesterday, but I have a comment I'd like to share, if I might. I'm really grateful to be here today, and I'm very grateful to you for helping us to kind of go from where we have been to a little more of awakened way of thinking. And it's I think it's easy for us in our limited viewpoint to want to hold someone in blame and have anger. And so if we're not directing our anger towards the enemy over there, then we want to direct our anger towards our own government and say, well, why are we killing, innocent citizens over there, and there's even more people dying? And I have a sense that what you're trying to get us to come to understand is not to have an airy-fairy kind of spiritual view that says, well, there's no death anyway, life is eternal, and nothing real can be harmed, and so forth and so on, but to have a sense that we need to act appropriately in the moment to say no or to stop something that is potentially could create further harm. And I'm thinking of myself when I was raising my sons, and I loved all my sons equally, but sometimes one son might hit another of his brothers with a stick and chasing him around and hitting him, and I would have to, protect the child who's being injured, and then, take the stick out of the other kid's hand and give him a swift spank on the butt and yell at him, no, don't you ever do that. And so I kind of feel like, I wasn't in a place at that point where I was not loving the child that had the stick, but I needed to stop him from doing that so that he wouldn't put the eye out or cause great injury to his brother.
Indeed, and the last part of that is that once the attack has been stopped, you sit both of them down and work out the issue.
Right.
And teach and educate and help them to see how they can work together and how they can abandon their misperceptions of each other that have led to the altercation.
That's just going right to the next thing I wanted to ask you is, can we expect an outcome where after all this fighting is done, that maybe we can actually sit down with these countries who are hating us for various reasons and say, how can we treat you so that you won't hate us so much? How can we get along and respect each other's differences of religion and so forth?
You can expect that, and if you don't get it, then you must demand it as citizens.
How can we demand someone else to
You would
not
demand
be,
it of your own government if your own government isn't doing it.
I see what you're saying. But we can't demand another country or anyone who's in a state of ego consciousness. We can't demand that they not be. I mean, we just have to
No, but you can
deal with
invite dialogue. And as I discussed last time, you can persistently demonstrate your trustworthiness to your enemy to show that there is reason for them to have faith to come to the table and talk. Mm-hmm. The overture of peace has to be made.
Yeah.
And it has to be made over and over and over again until the trustworthiness of the offer is recognized. Mm-hmm. And that's part of caring. You care enough to persist in demonstrating your genuine, I'm going to say love, but the genuineness of your invitation until it is accepted. And as always is the case in relationships, it takes two to tangle. And so both sides, even if one of them was the one that demanded, by persisting in extending the overture of peace, that one who extended the persistent invitation must be willing to look with genuine sincerity at the part they have played in bringing things to the point of September 11th, or whatever the issue is.
Yeah. And I also, I really acknowledge and appreciate that, because my spouse and I were just having a talk about that. But I also wanted to just express, it's easy, so easy for us to look at our commander-in-chief, president, or generals and be critical of how they're handling a situation. And we're not privy to all the facts of a given situation. But I'll tell you what, I am so grateful that I'm not on that seat where I have to decide whether or not to bomb this city where so-called innocent victims may be killed in order to get the bad guys, so to speak.
Indeed.
You know, we're so blessed to live isolated from that violence, you know. But I know that if someone came into my house shooting a gun or
I'm
trying
going
to
to interrupt.
violate. Sure.
You have a disadvantage at having been isolated from the violence. And that disadvantage is that you don't spontaneously know how to cope with it. And you would rather reject it out of hand. And you would rather leave it out there. And you forget what I've been talking about, the kind of persistence it takes, and the down-to-earth, practical overtures of peace, and the willingness to persist without becoming discouraged, the willingness to persist whether other people are moving fast enough or not, and the ability to do this, let us say, without immediate resolution, and to be able to be free of overwhelming fear. Those who exist in these kinds of conditions on a daily basis have had to learn how not to be overwhelmingly afraid, and thereby lose their capacity to maintain some sort of balance and optimism, whether it's in Northern Ireland or whether it's in Afghanistan or wherever it might be, where people live with the ongoing threat of terror and violence. And you forget about that because you've been isolated from it for so long, and as a result, you wish it would go away, rather than remembering how to be in this context in a way that brings about resolution. The United States has been free of war since the Civil War. It has been relatively free of threat. It has become comfortable. You all have felt an ease that indeed it's your birthright to be experiencing, and it's the birthright of everyone else on the globe to be experiencing. And in the midst of that, you have become self-satisfied. You are pleased with your possessions. You are pleased with having. You are pleased with getting. And you're pleased with getting right now, right now, right now. I want, I get right now, right now. Very little patience is called for. And you're forgetting how to be patient, which is another way of saying you're forgetting how to be persistent. You are forgetting how to be persistent on behalf of each other. And you become a little arrogant about how much better off you are than people who are having to wait.
So you're saying that each of us has a responsibility then to actively persist for peace.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, I wasn't here yesterday either, but what I'm hearing is the intent to wake up and not take that suicide mission, to be accountable, to know what it is we're doing and why. And
Exactly.
The mission of just standing up and for your own rights and not letting your freedom be taken away. But yes, the bombing is horrible, and yes, these people are getting killed. But if we didn't stand up for ourselves, they would continue to suicide themselves against us.
That is true. But even beyond that, having arrived at a point where there is enough self-respect to stand up for yourself, you can't then look at others who are not experiencing that self-respect, or who are under the domination of those who have no respect for them, and say, that's their problem.
Right.
You've got to fight, you might say. You've got to stand up for their having the experience of self-respect. Ordinarily, when you get good news, don't you share it? When something really wonderful happens, you let people know. You extend. You extend new information to those who are less enlightened, meaning those who don't have the information yet.
That's the same theory as if someone is to say, you won't amount to anything, makes you even want to be more.
Pardon?
As if someone's to say, you wouldn't amount to anything, that gives you the power to be more.
Yes. And that means then you have more to give. And that means that it's your responsibility to see to it that you're not the only one who has it. Just a moment. This is why I have been talking about witnessing for your brother. So that the good news becomes theirs. So that the light of your candle gets passed on to the light of their candle without diminishing yours, and where their light is equal to yours and it's theirs to pass on. Now, in this respect, this isolationism, this state of comfort that you in your country have experienced is the good news that needs to be shared. The fact that you feel a right to it, and that you're not apologetic for it, and you're not ashamed for it, is the experience that is everyone's birthright to have. And if you're not extending it when you have it, then you are withholding it